could probably only speak to the kinds of challenges that I'm particularly aware of, given my own research in philosophy. So I think there are particularly epistemological challenges to religious belief that I think are sort of floating out there in the common sense of ordinary people. That I think epistemologists could, especially Christian epistemologists, are sort of apt to help us understand. And that has to do with just sort of basic ordinary Christian or theistic knowledge, sort of on the part of the ordinary sort of theist in the street. If you think like John McDowell, that knowledge is a standing in the space of reasons, the space of justifying and being able to justify what one says, then you have difficulty with trying to understand how the theist in the street knows something in that way. I mean, this is how John McDowell sort of characterizes what he calls mature human knowledge. So a lot of recent sort of work stemming from Al Plantinga's recent work has been to suggest that, well, even if ordinary Christian knowledge isn't sort of a standing in the space of reasons, the space of justifying and being able to justify what one says, because after all, the theist in the street doesn't have any good arguments to give. That's just stipulated not to have any good arguments. Even still, though, they might know that God exists on kind of an animal level or brute level. Perhaps this belief is just the product of proper functioning, reliable cognitive faculties, and we don't really need to make any sense of any kind of epistemic support for these beliefs beyond that. The problem is this shuts out the ordinary theist in the street from being able to enjoy the kind of knowledge of God's existence that I think John McDowell was right to suggest that is kind of distinctive of human beings. Knowledge that's a standing in the space of being able to offer reasons for one's belief. So part of my own research has been to advance this idea that even if the theist in the street cannot offer any potentially dialectically effective argument for thinking that God exists, that we shouldn't be so ready to think that therefore their religious, their theistic knowledge, their knowledge that God exists, isn't a standing in the space of reasons. We shouldn't think that they can offer some kind of non-circular reason for thinking that God exists. I think they can, by way of appealing to things like religious experiences, I've argued, and also appealing to things like intentional actions. Like, so why do you believe that God exists? I prayed to him this morning. I think that's a perfectly legitimate move, and part of my work has been to sort of substantiate that as a good epistemically non-circular reason to believe that God exists. So yeah, I think so. There's that sort of challenge, I think, to theistic belief. I think there's a common sense conception that if you know something, you should be able to present some good reason to think that it's true, and I think epistemologists can help us to understand how even the theist in the street is in a position to do that. So.